How's it going, everybody? This is Martin Stokes here.
And this is Dean Scurry.
And I am a traveller.
And I'm a countryman.
Welcome to A Traveller
and a Countryman podcast. Welcome to episode 27, A Traveller and a Countryman podcast. We're doing our third outside broadcast. The first one was with Martin's mother, Ellie. Then we done our live show with Lynn Ruan a few weeks ago. And now we're in Mend HQ. So we're in Mend with Subset, and the lads have invited us over here to have a chat, see where the lads are at, get an update, and inform people as to what the fuck is Subset and why should anybody care. So, welcome, and I'm going to start with that. What the fuck is Subset and why should anybody care?
We don't really know the answer to either of those questions. Still trying to figure that out every day.
What does Subset do, basically?
Again, it's very difficult for us to actually define that. So we do a whole load of different stuff. At the moment, anyway, we're going wherever the wind takes us and trying to figure ourselves out in that process. I suppose just for the sake of the podcast, we're a collective.
Collective of what? Rabbits? Fucking deers?
People, man. Just people, like people.
Deers in the headlights?
People who have, at times, people who have interests, like a wide range of interests. Art being the overarching commonality between us, but... So
Subset are an art collective of artists. Without getting too fucking...
Yeah, I mean, like, there are artists in the collective, but it's not just a collective of artists, you know, it's like I said.
So I explained this to my girlfriend when I got home. She goes, Dean, where the fuck are you? We were meant to go shopping, and I'm going, I was over with Subset. You know who they are. They're the artists, so the collective of artists. So there's a collective that has artists in it. She's like, what are you talking about? And then I say to her, you know the lads who done the big Horse Boy, or who done the big Stormzy? That's them. Oh yeah, I get you now, I understand. For me, that's where the majority of people in this country are with Subset.
Where did you paint Stormzy?
Haymarket Square in Smithfield.
And is it still there? It is?
No, it's gone. Many years now.
Serious?
Mm-hmm.
So how long ago was it when you done it?
2017.
Yeah? You go back like 5 years now, is it?
Mm-hmm.
And when you say it's gone, what happened to it?
Dublin City Council forced us to remove it.
Serious?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd imagine it was a nice painting.
Was.
Because I've seen a little bit of your work, lads. And why would Dublin City Council remove it?
We didn't have planning permission.
Just to do a bit of painting?
Yes.
And was it like waste ground?
No, it wasn't waste ground. It was a vacant building, and we got in touch with the owners of it and asked them could we use it to paint a mural, and they were obliging, and we went and painted it. So
basically, you got permission from the owners to do it?
Yes.
And was this painting up? Was it like was it a high painting?
It was a 3-story building.
And did you paint on all of the...
Yeah.
Say, what was it with the gable side of it, would it be?
Was.
And you painted on all that wall, did you?
Yes.
So it was obviously a massive painting then?
It was.
So I'm sure probably anybody who was passing by there without a doubt could recognise it, like.
I don't think you would have missed a 40-foot black man in the
not,
middle of
no
Smithfield.
way. Why did Dublin City Council take it down?
Because we didn't have planning permission. We didn't follow the process and procedure that they have set out for the creation of public artwork.
And why? What would be their main reasons for taking this painting down?
Because we didn't follow their process and their procedure. So they have a very prescriptive approach which needs to be taken in order to get their permission.
Even though it's a privately owned building?
Exactly.
So legally you did get permission to do it, like, but...
We got permission from the owner of the building, but we didn't have permission from the city council.
And did you even think there was going to be a problem with the council when you did this painting?
Yes.
You did?
Yeah, we knew.
And you went ahead with it?
Yes.
All right. So where was the sense in doing all this painting and knowing that Dublin City Council was going to take it back down? When I say take it back down, they painted over it again?
No, they made us paint over it.
Serious?
As a cheeky move.
Wow.
I was thinking in my head there.
Well, you see,
process before paint.
If we refused to paint it, they would have had to take us to court.
Well, didn't you go to court, you little bitches?
Well, we didn't go to court at that stage because we didn't have the appropriate level of knowledge and experience and expertise to actually defend ourselves. So we knew that would be the conclusion if we were to refuse to engage with them. But as I said, at that stage, we weren't prepared to do that because I don't think it was the right time for us. But we knew in advance that that was going to happen. So part of the reason or the motivation for painting it was to bring or draw attention to this situation.
Attention from who? The public, is it?
Yeah,
And did it draw attention from the public?
it did.
All right. So what was the public's reaction towards that?
The reaction to the actual mural was very positive. I'd say like 99% positive.
I'd imagine so.
And the reaction to us having to paint over the mural was...
Sickening, was it?
I wouldn't necessarily say it was sickening because we knew we were going to have to do it, so we were already prepared mentally for the reality. So the reaction from the public to that, the painting of it was positive, the painting over of it was negative, but negative in terms of the opinion of Dublin City Council.
So was this building like waste, abandoned sort of like?
It wasn't abandoned, but it was empty.
It was empty.
And it was scheduled to be demolished and
It's
developed.
not there now, isn't it?
No, it was demolished and
It's
developed.
gone now, and it's an office block now.
Yep.
So do you think from the public's side of it that this nice painting brought light to the area, like?
I don't really like to speak on behalf of the public because in today's society, I think that can be problematic. But as far as our perception or opinion of their response to it, yes, it was very positive.
I'd imagine like if there was a couple of tourists around now, I'm sure they stopped to look at her and said, gee, this is great, this is lovely work here.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a coffee shop right beside it. Proper Order Coffee, it's called. And their guys in there are very supportive, so shout out to them. But we would have had a relationship with them from this first painting throughout them painting the wall multiple times. And they would have commented on multiple occasions about the increase in foot traffic as a result of people coming to look at the mural.
We love a bit of business in Ireland, don't we? Or a bit of tourism.
Yeah, of course.
We love footfall coming to our doors. I remember there was objections to homeless people sleeping in certain shops in the city. And the objection was from business owners. Well, this was the rhetoric anyway. And that them sleeping there in the doorway of shops reduced the amount of footfall and the amount of money coming into the shop. So there was an economic argument for it. Just while you're talking and while we're getting into this, because we were chatting before this and you and Martin had a great little bit of banter before this. And as soon as I turned on the mic and we started talking about this, the mood changed a little bit and I felt that you were a little bit cautious of the words you were saying. I don't know if cautious is what you were feeling, but that's kind of what I felt. As in, just be careful what the fuck we say here. And that's an interesting space to be in with a couple of lads who are in their prime. You're in your fucking prime, bro, and you're being cautious about little words that you say. Me and Martin have the privilege of being a little bit older, and I'm less fucking cautious. I will say, generally,
I wouldn't say cautious. I would say clear.
Yeah. So you're being very mindful or clear or very precise about the words that you're saying.
Just selective, because words in this particular situation are very important because we're dealing with things like legislation, and legislation is built from words and words that have different definitions and meanings. We'll go back to that and get into that at a later stage, I'm sure, but it's not a sense of being cautious from a fear-based perspective. It's cautious in terms of trying to be clear because this will most likely be our last public conversation that we have.
Are you being cautious about in case you offend somebody?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm being clear in what I'm saying because we want to ensure that whatever message we convey today is heard and understood, because we've had conversations, ad nauseum over the last 10 years about these subjects and about these situations, and still to this day we're still unsure of exactly what it is subset is and what it is that we're doing. So therefore, obviously the public and anybody that's listening to this most likely will feel the same.
What I was thinking when you were talking to Martin was, there have been arts collectives before Subset. There have been murals painted on walls before Subset in this city. Some of them with the council's permission, some of them without the council's permission. And there's definitely walls painted in other parts of this country without anybody's permission. And in other counties, for example, Waterford, it's fucking embraced like it's this magic new culture that they've just learned about.
I wouldn't say it's embraced. I would say it's leveraged.
Leveraged, okay. But I remember being in Dublin City Council in the arts officer's office with an artist, with a muralist, or whatever the words are, okay? And probably at the time the country's most well-known muralist. And he was saying to me, look, I have to leave this country because I can't paint walls here. So we went up and brought him up to this fella I knew who ran the art section of Dublin City Council. And we went into his office, and on the wall in this dude's office was this guy's most well-known piece. And I just looked at both of them and I said, I'm just going to leave here, because obviously you know where this conversation is going. He wants to paint walls and your organisation is preventing him from painting walls. Hold hands and fucking get on with it.
Yeah, I don't know if they're necessarily preventing it. They just want it done in a very particular way. A way...
Well, the way that they wanted it done was preventing it.
Yeah, it's just they want it done in a subservient way.
Happy is the city whose citizens obey, which is the motto of Dublin City Council, in case anybody doesn't know. Let's say that again. Happy is the city whose citizens obey. Yup the flats.
So how long are you doing this painting anyway?
We've been doing it for about 10 years. 10
years completely. And how many times in the 10 years have Dublin City Council made you take down paintings again?
35, 40, 50. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but it's between 35 and 50. Yeah.
Okay. And tell me something, is it about certain areas this only happens in?
That is part of it. The location is relevant in the conversation, but I think mostly it's based on, again, going back to the process and procedure and the need of Dublin City Council for those who engage in this process and procedure to be subservient to their particular approach.
But we done a piece together in Ballymun, a Skepta piece, and there was no subservience in that. In Carton Road, in Ballymun, which is like, it's like Settled Travellers, and then right beside it is St. Margaret's, where there's like Martin and a group of other different travellers live. We done a piece together of Skepta, who's a grime artist from the UK. It's the cover of his album where he's holding his newly born child. And we weren't subservient to anybody in that. You guys just came, said, can we do a painting here? We have an idea. We all said yes. I knocked into the fella who owns the house. He said yes. We painted it. Skepta came down and he loved it. And nobody from Dublin City Council said to me, as far as I'm aware, they didn't say to you, paint over that. And I didn't ask for permission. You didn't ask for permission. We didn't follow any procedure.
So it was these guys that painted it?
It was these guys that painted that,
I was actually wondering who paints it, because it's absolutely, it's lovely, it is.
So is that about location?
The colour in it.
Again, I can't speak on behalf of Dublin City Council, but I would imagine location played a part.
It's on a traveller site.
In it, yeah.
Yeah, but the colour is really nice in it now. So I'm wondering why would Dublin City Council want to be taking down paintings, as the fellow said, within reason, and off walls that can be nicely lit up by these paintings, if you like.
Control.
Yeah. So you drive through Dublin, we see lots of places that's run down, closed up, vacant, whatever, and literally there's nothing being done with them to make them look a better part of our city, if you like. And then along comes you lads and does these nice different types of paintings. They're not classed as graffiti, are they, no?
No.
But does Dublin City Council call them graffiti? They don't. So they know there's a meaning to every painting you do, basically.
I presume they know there's a meaning, yeah.
But on the other side of that, Dublin City Council paid Subset and other artists and other collectives to do graffiti, to do what is generally known as graffiti. If you Google graffiti and you see certain images, what we done in Ballymun with Dublin City Council, with All City and with Subset is graffiti.
Yeah, well, Dublin City Council, again, I don't think they're opposed to the idea of murals or graffiti or painting or artworks. I think they're opposed to the idea of artists doing it without their involvement.
Or anybody. Because if we pull out of it, anybody doing anything without their permission in their city, unhappy is the citizens who don't obey. Up to their bollocks in legislation or fines is a citizen who doesn't obey.
I think it just boils down to control, to put it simply. They want to have the final say on what happens in the city.
It's their city, though.
They are the arbiters of taste and development.
What's the case then if that was the thing? Supposing you wanted to do a drawing, like a painting basically, and that you approach Dublin City Council to ask their permission, what's their story then? What's their answer?
Well, there's two different ways in which it happens. You can make a planning application.
Right.
Or you can partner with them and do something in collaboration. And they have two different processes and procedures for that. If you approach them and say, we have an idea, we want to do this, and they ask you to make a planning application. If you approach them and say, we'd like to do this with you guys, and they say, that's okay, and we'll do it through a different piece of legislation. And that, the difference in those two processes and procedures is, one is a long, drawn-out process that can take anywhere from 3 to 6 to 9 to 12 months more. And the other option is to collaborate with them or partner with them, and in that case, it can be pretty immediate.
But that then means that they need to have input into the production of the work. So, they could be having issues with colours or whatever.
Creative input, creative control, back to the word control again. And so if they want it done, it's lickety-split, let's get it done. If you want it done, fill in the form. If you want it done and they don't want it done, paint over it and you might go to court. I like it when they want it done and they're all happy about it and it's all jolly and all. And there's little food stations and coffee stations and photographers. And when it's artists who want it and they don't want it, there's letters from solicitors.
It becomes a kind of a PR thing for them where, they're out there with photographers and it's in the newspaper, it's on their social media. Look at what we've done here, isn't this wonderful? And that kind of seems to be the case.
I think it's important to say it again. It's their city. They're the council of Dublin City.
They think it's their city, and it's their city as long as we allow it to be their city.
As long as we obey.
So let's talk about cities. Is it what about counties? Have you got the same problem in counties, let alone cities?
The legislation is the same nationally, but it differs from city to city, county to county, town to town.
So have you ever went to another county and done painting?
Yes.
And did you ever have problems with it?
No.
So you didn't have the same problem as you have in Dublin City Council where you live? Dublin City, basically.
No, the problem for us has been specific to Dublin.
There's some, I'm not sure, is it Cork or Limerick? I think it's one of these, where a boy and a girl, now there could be a couple of them as well, they went around doing all the paintings all over the city, more or less. And the people absolutely love it. And the council is not taking them down. They're there because they're completely lighting up the city. They're doing them in places where it's a good view, basically, of the public, if you like. And there's absolutely no complaints at all about it. And there was comment after comment saying how nice it was, and they couldn't praise these artists enough. They're literally saying, look, it's cleaning up our city. It's making our certain areas look great.
See, I think the contention arose from the fact that we would have been very public with our communication with respect to the fact that we were breaking the law. So we would have communicated that what we were doing technically is breaking the law, and we felt it shouldn't be breaking the law, and the legislation needed to be changed. And we attempted to, on multiple different occasions, engage with Dublin City Council to discuss the possibility of changing the legislation. And they weren't interested in it. And we spoke with ministers, we spoke with the various different institutions who are engaged in the arts, even up as far as the President's office. But there was no will or motivation to change the legislation because no one was willing to put their head on the chopping block. Because if the legislation was changed, and the rhetoric, I suppose, within Dublin City Council is that if we allow one group or one artist to do what they want, then it will open up the door for everybody to do what they want, and then we can't control that.
So that reminds me of something that I was involved in. I was involved in this thing where we're bringing Dublin City Council, Now, on board Pernalla, Irish Water and the state to court for the shy pipe that's going out into the Irish Sea at Islands Eye there. And we won our case, and they tried to get us to pay the costs. And then there was a precedent that happened in Europe, and we don't have to pay the costs. So now, this week, we also exposed a number of things on board Pernalla, like conflicts of interests. And that's why on board, it's one of the reasons on board Pernalla is being rebranded and renamed. You've probably seen that in the news this week. But Darragh O'Brien is trying to rewrite the legislation about what groups of people can complain to the state about planning applications. So residents groups possibly now won't be able to complain as a group to on board Pernalla or the state about planning infringements or planning issues and so on. It's interesting that when they want to bend the rules to suit them, it's fucking dead easy. But when you want to bend the rules, it's like, no way, nobody's going to put their head on the block.
Well, you see, we didn't want to bend the rules. We wanted to break them. And we wanted to break them to highlight the fact that us technically breaking the rules was ludicrous. And therefore the situation needed to be addressed professionally and given its due consideration. But in the grand scheme of things, somewhat understandably, according to Dublin City Council, it isn't a priority and it doesn't require an investment of time and effort and energy. So we took that on board and we decided that we would invest that time and effort and energy to bring it to the fore and to create conversation and engagement with the public, because we believe it's a matter of public interest. And we believe a change in legislation would be incredibly valuable for the artistic community, but also for society on the whole. So, again, we could go on about it all day in terms of where the motivations are coming from for the legislation to be as it currently is. But our motivation for wanting it to be changed is that we feel it will be of value to our society.
Devil's advocate, fuck art. Fuck art, fuck murals, fuck paintings, fuck you as young artists. We'll rape and pillage the legacy of all the other Irish artists without paying artists any kind of homage or wages, and we'll sell Irish art and the concept of Irish art and music and literature and poetry across the world, but you're never going to benefit from it, bro, so fuck art.
Yeah, I mean, like, if that's the stance, that's the stance. We're not really concerned anymore with the opinion of Dublin City Council. We're concerned with our own opinion. And our opinion is that the conversation needs to be had. It's not that the law needs to change, although that would be our prerogative. You know, at the end of the day, what needs to happen is a conversation needs to take place in the public domain. And us as a democratic society should be able to decide amongst ourselves whether or not we feel a change in legislation would be beneficial. And if it is, good, and if it's not, okay, but the conversation needs to be had.
Beyond the vote here, because that's an interesting thing, because I was watching Brendan Gleeson on RTE talking about what we got from the Civil War, which was 100 years ago, yeah? And one of the things he said, I'm not sure if it was him, but it was alluded to in the show. Actually, it was expressed explicitly in the show that beyond all of the mad shit that the Catholic Church got up to in this country when they had power, one of the things that we benefited from was, one is we remained neutral in war during World War II, and we had democracy. So what I'm trying to say here is, do you think we have democracy other than the vote every couple of years? And every couple of years is stretching out further and further. It's like 7, 8, 9, 10 years now. Do you think we have democracy here?
No, I don't believe we're a democratic society, no.
That's an interesting statement for you as a member of an arts collective in Ireland, that you don't think we have a democracy.
Do you have, I know it's a different thing anyway, do you have a website that supports you in your art, basically?
We have a website. It's very basic and straightforward, and it pretty much just discusses this situation.
Well, the reason I'm asking it is to get some feedback from the public and see what they think of it, like whether they think it's good or bad what you're doing.
Well, there has been over the last number of years a lot of feedback from the public, be it in press and media, be it on social media, be it in conversation. And
has it been positive or negative?
Positive. I mean, as always, it's going to be mixed and people are entitled to their opinions. But so are we. And our opinion is, as we're discussing here, that the subject needs to be addressed and it needs to be discussed.
Has that been put forward to Dublin City Council, like the fact that you're getting positive feedback and people do like what you're doing?
Yeah, Dublin City Council are completely aware of the reality of the situation and the public opinion on it and the public discourse in respect.
Do you think that Dublin City Council are they working just through stubbornness or what?
I have fear, I would say, not stubbornness.
Fear of what?
Loosening their grip on control.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. Is it a situation where, like, we're going to tell you what to do, you won't kind of tell us, like?
Exactly.
Do you feel that as well when you're actually doing the work you do?
Yeah, absolutely.
So is that going to make you give up, or are you going to continue to do it?
That's not going to make us give up, but our general state of affairs and the position that we're in, it's becoming an insurmountable task for us to continue fighting.
And is this happening because of Dublin City Council? Yes.
Partly. Like the lion's share of the reason we're in this particular situation is due to the legal proceedings with Dublin City Council. It's not the only reason, but it's the lion's share of the reason.
It's crazy doing something that you love. Obviously you love doing it, like, and that you have no choice you're forced to stop it, basically.
Well, I wouldn't say we're forced to stop it. Like, still right now we're doing it. And
you're on the road to being forced. If Dublin City Council are tracing every move you make, I'd imagine that's forcing you to stop it.
It's part of it. Again, I wouldn't say, even we're talking about language beforehand, they're not forcing us to do anything. We don't recognise their authority in this particular area. So, force would convey them using what they have at their disposal to prevent us doing this, and they are doing it, but it's not going to work. As we've shown them on multiple occasions.
Are they not using this moment what they have at their disposal to stop you from doing it?
They are, but it's not working. We're still
doing. You're going to continue doing it? Then?
Yeah, we're going to continue doing it until we can no longer do it because of our own personal circumstances and situations.
What about to continue in doing it until you get someone on your side that will be able to help you to continue doing it? Have you ever looked at that side of it, no?
Yeah, right now as it stands, early in the new year, we're going to introduce a public art bill to the Dáil, and that will give the general public the opportunity to have their say in respect to whether or not the legislation should be changed. But given our situation, even if it is changed, we're not sure whether or not we'll be able to continue doing what we're doing. But that doesn't matter at this stage for us. We're not. And
is that for financial reasons? Can I ask?
Yeah, of course you can ask. At the end of the day, everything comes down to money, really, doesn't it? So I suppose it is financial reasons.
So why don't you just go off and do corporate work then? I'm sure there's plenty of corporate work that where the people with your skill set.
We did a lot of corporate work, and it was very detrimental to our overarching vision and our motivation and our modus operandi. The reason we engaged in commercial work was to sustain ourselves, but in sustaining ourselves it impacted our integrity and had a very negative impact on our team, our morale,
mental health,
our mindset, our mental health as well. So we decided, fuck this, we're not going to do any of this shit anymore, because that's what it was shit, and it was stuff that we never wanted to do.
So if you do murals on walls with permission from proprietors, is there money to be made in that? Like, for example, there was one that you done on Angel Street there of Queen Maeve, I think it was, for a whiskey brand. Is there an economic transaction there?
Yeah, absolutely. For us as Subset, we didn't benefit from it. We were more involved in it from a managerial role, I suppose, if you want to call it that.
But for the artist, probably.
Yeah, for the people involved in it, it definitely provided at least a temporary livelihood or temporary sustainability, which is great. But in the context of this conversation and the legislation, we're not motivated by trying to have commercial artwork legislated for, because it's different to art for art's sake.
Where in the world is art for art's sake embraced the most? Because I remember Dublin City Council and BRL in Ballymun, in the middle of the €1 billion blatant hustle that they done in Ballymun, they flew this woman in from Philadelphia, and she was like part of this group, this collective, this arts collective in Philadelphia, and she showed us photographs of, 10, 15-story buildings in Philadelphia, and they had all like the jazz heroes on the side of them and all that. And it looked like what they were saying was Philadelphia is the place, and we want to make Ballymun one of those places. And we think art can add to the community, to society.
Yeah, Philadelphia is a great example. Auckland, New Zealand is a great example. Sydney, Australia is another great example. There's multiple examples all over the world where there's a very successful and thriving art scene and community as a result of the legislation that they have in place. And I think it will be good for us to look at those cities and emulate aspects of what it is that they're doing. But at the end of the day, I think Ireland can be its own independent mind in this particular area, and we can set out our own processes and procedures that are unique. So like there's learning and there's education from looking at these other cities and how they go about it. But still, even in the most free-spirited cities, there's still a level of control by the city council.
So that's the nature of city councils, is control and permission. You didn't get permission from that, or here's how you get permission from that. And I've seen on Dublin City Council's Facebook recently was, if you don't have permission for A, B and C, like juvenile stuff, they've been putting this up for the last couple of months. Here's the form that you need for permission for this thing. That generally we all just fucking done anyway. You know what I mean? Now it looks like they're going, we better get all our forms for all the things. Like Australia. Australia's like that. You want to open it. I think if you want to leave a window open in your gaff in Australia, or you want to sit in a public park, you have to get a bit of permission. I think that's for real. I'm not making that shit up. If you want to leave your window open, some fella was arrested because he left his window open, and the crime was your gaff could have been robbed.
And again, like, you can get very bogged down in right, wrong, correct, incorrect,
proving points and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like we've had this, as I said, this conversation ad nauseum in lots of different formats with lots of different organisations, institutions, but at the end of the day it boils down to, we feel there's more benefit than there is drawback.
Is there funding or is there sponsorships for the work you do?
There can be, if you're willing to abide and adhere to specific criteria that are set out by those who hold the purse strings, and we've done that in the past, and it's provided us with temporary sustainability. But the impact that it has on things, like I said, morale and integrity and mental health are not worth it.
But is this form of work is actually your job, basically?
Yeah.
So you sort of rely on this kind of, yeah?
Entirely.
All right. So now we have Dublin City Council basically taking away your livelihood then?
I suppose you could say that in ways, yes.
So taking away the work
they're having an impact on our livelihood. I wouldn't say they're taking it away, because the way in which it predominantly was a livelihood for us was engaging in commercial projects that we didn't want to do in the first place, but we were doing to keep the lights on and keep the vision and the dream alive. So we never really operated autonomously and independently. And what we're trying to do with changing the legislation is at least give the opportunity or the platform to operate independently. So, for example, we would go and paint artworks. They would be seen by commercial enterprises, and then they would want to capitalise or leverage on the positive interaction and exchange in the public domain with those murals, with those artworks. And then they would reach out to us and say, we saw that you did X, Y, and Z. Now we'd like you to do A, B, and C. But A, B, and C came with a whole list of category and criteria that needed to be ticked, boxes that needed to be ticked. And once you're dealing with boxes that need to be ticked or criteria from a commercial enterprise, it has an impact on the artistic integrity. So, really what we would like to see in Ireland is artists getting paid for creating the works of art which they want to create, not which someone else is telling them to create. And that's the same with Dublin City Council. They effectively use artistry as a means of propaganda to communicate the value of the city as far as they see it. So
there was a high profile one there, probably the Taoiseach referenced a piece of art, and the artist said, hold on a fucking minute here, you can't be using my name to promote your agenda. Is that true? Did I make that up?
It's correct. But at the same time, the funding for that artwork came from a department within government.
Okay. So it reminds me as well what you're talking about. It was like busking in the city. Yeah? Like at Christmas now, there's a big busk. And apparently, you know, all the big stars are coming out. And we're going to do a big thing for homeless, as happens all the time. But busking in the city now has loads of forms and permissions that you have to seek. And we don't mind selling our artist's name and image abroad, but we don't want to pay them to do the thing that they love to do on the streets. We want to control it.
Yeah, we want to get all up in the business of it. You know, you want to be in a position of control. Again, it's like, we'll pay you if you tick these boxes. But as soon as you start ticking those boxes, it has an impact on the integrity of the artwork. So ideally, much like if you go to a gallery and you see a piece of art that you love and you want to buy it, you don't then approach the artist and say, I love this, but I want you to change this colour and I want you to bring in this subject matter and then I'll buy it. Say, I love this as it is, as you've created it, and therefore I'm going to give you money for it.
Yeah, I want you to do an LGBT piece or a refugee piece or a bleeding, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And we've fallen victim to that on multiple occasions because, well, fallen victim is actually not the right way to say it. Like, we've knowingly engaged in multiple different projects where there's been an agenda and there's been criteria and there's been a brief that you have to adhere to, but it's like you try and argue and you try and discuss and you try and communicate that this isn't the right approach or this isn't the right way to go or this doesn't actually fit with our values or our ideologies. I mean, you kind of just get a shoulder shrug and it's like, take it or leave it, you know. This is what we want painted. Are you going to paint that? Yes or no? And if you're not, then we're going to find someone else who'll do it. And when you're dealing with a community that's, you know, starved of money, naturally there's always going to be people, and like I said, we've been those people who put their hand up and say, okay, we'll do it. And then that just has an impact on the autonomy and the integrity and the independence of the artist community and on art and culture in general. And it curates it. And it's being curated by those who, as far as we're concerned, know fuck all about art. Yeah,
it definitely doesn't nurture it. I can imagine if you relate it back to the example of the busker is, we have a show up in Smithfield, Dublin City Council are running. You know, everyone put your name in the hat and you might get it. And if you do get it, we want you to sing a song about jolly times, rather than just let me fucking play music where I want in the city. It's my city. Let us as artists or as musicians just organise ourselves and make whatever headway we want to make. We don't need the nanny state control freaks eyeballing every single decision we make.
It's important to say as well, like Dublin City Council as an organisation doing a huge amount of incredibly valuable work for our city and for our people. And like there's multiple different departments in it, which are, you know, not just essential, but lead to life actually flourishing. So we don't have an issue or, you know, we're not antagonistic towards Dublin City Council on the whole. It's just the easiest way to summarise the conversation is to use that title when we're talking about it. But our issues are ideological ones, that ultimately Dublin City Council is a hierarchy, and at the end of the day, the way in which things unfold or develop comes from the top down. And if at the top, the ideology is motivated by the idea of control or the citizens obeying, then anyone who's, you know, counterintuitive to that or in conflict with that is a problem.
Have you ever done any paintings in any different areas that Dublin City Council have turned a blind eye to and just left alone, like without overpainting them? Yes, and you notice that they've recognised, yes. And have they ever made any comments about these particular paintings?
I mean, in private, yes. Like we have multiple conversations with them right up to the top level, and they're very aware of the value that public art brings to society, you know, socio-economically, and they see it as an important aspect of the future of our city's development.
Yeah.
But they want control over how it is a part of that development.
Just give them fucking control then and everyone's happy.
Well, no, because once you give them control, then they start to have an input and a say. And again, you know, in certain areas, you know, like engineering, roads, environmental
State-run
waste.
TV.
You know, yeah.
The state-run TV one is interesting. We have RTE and it's bland as fuck. And I can imagine if the state or Dublin City Council ran busking, it would be bland as fuck. If they ran murals and art, it would be bland as fuck. We would have murals and art, but there'd be no balls or bite or, you know, that type of stuff in it.
Myself and Martin were chatting beforehand, you know, what we're basically trying to do with this is keep our inner child alive, you know, and they're trying to shun it and take it away.
Grow fucking up, will you?
They're risk mitigation and we're imagination. You know, they want to prevent potential fallout from happening. It's like Minority Report. You know, they see, oh, this could go wrong, so we're going to stop it now. Whereas we see this could go right, we need to make it happen.
I remember one example, right, of the piece that we done up in Ballymun, that we done Subset and All City with Dublin City Council. And one of the lads, I think it was one of the All City lads, he wrote a wish list of shit that he wanted for Christmas. And it was like a box of fags, 20 cans, da-da-da-da-da. And I got a phone call from Dublin City Council going, one of those pieces has something written on the wall that might offend somebody. Now, we ended up painting over all of the text with a lovely leopard. But that was the level of conversation, the level of worry from Dublin City Council that somebody at some point somewhere might get offended by something that we were involved in.
The absolute audacity of that, you know, to say that a member or members of the City Council speak for the general public in terms of what content is suitable or unsuitable. It's just putting parameters on imagination. And like that flies in the face of what imagination is. And I think in a healthy democratic society, there should be an ability to freely express yourself, rightly or wrongly, and to be able to put it out into the public and receive that feedback from it. And like most people, not saying everybody, but most people, especially in today's society, if you do something that's met with a negative response, you're going to know about it, you're going to feel it, you're going to hear it, you're going to see it, and it's going to have an impact on your livelihood, on your character, and on how people deal with you. So, you know, I think naturally most people will tread carefully in terms of what they see as suitable and unsuitable, but at the end of the day, they should be able to make that decision and not have that made for them.
Yeah, it's almost like their risk aversion is their default mode.
Yeah, I think there's another thing as well where there's this sort of idea by the council and by other people that if you were to let artists go out and paint what they want, that you know, if you give artists a bit more freedom, that they will just go out and start painting mad stuff on walls that will be offensive or, you know, will be maybe like aesthetically not nice to look at. And it's quite like insulting, I suppose, to artists and to say building owners or whoever, where it's like, I think it's highly unlikely that people are going to be going around like drawing kind of like, you know, giant knobs on walls or something.
You're a fucking juvenile. You're going to make songs about, you're going to be like Nicki Minaj making songs about WAP. Yeah. That's who they think you're going to be. You know what I mean? If we have abortion legislation, everyone's going to go out and have an abortion.
That is an argument that they make, and it's kind of ludicrous really when you get into it. It's, you know, it takes a lot of, like, well, to bring it back to genitals or whatever, it takes a lot of balls to go out there and to paint a wall. It's like, it's not an easy thing to do, and yeah, there's just kind of a lack of respect, I think, in that idea that, you know, artists are just lunatics who want to go out and insult people or paint whatever they want on walls. It's totally not reality.
If we let you paint whatever you want on whatever walls you want, where does it end? You know what I mean? That's one argument. And then the risk aversion, I think, is the other one. We will avoid anything that brings any potential risk or litigation to our doorstep, to the point of blandness.
It's fear. You know, it's just fear. It's a fear-based model for society. It's a control-based model for society. And, you know, in the grand scheme of things, murals aren't particularly important. You know, we get that, we understand that, we know that. But they represent, at least for us, that freedom of expression, that ability to actually communicate how you're feeling or what you're seeing or what you're experiencing. And it's a very vital component of ensuring that those conversations are had and that voices are heard.
So basically, as an artist, yeah, what value do you think your art brings to Dublin City?
Going back to what we were saying at the start about the definition of subset or what it is, like, I don't even particularly like calling ourselves artists. Yes, we create works of art, but I don't kind of sit on that.
If you don't call yourself an artist, and you are actually, naturally we couldn't describe you as a painter, could we?
Well, I suppose you could. I mean, like, we're just people who are
So
expressing
what would you class
ourselves
yourself
in
as
different ways.
as a guy who paints?
A person. I find it very difficult to determine what I am. You know, I'm a human being that's consistently educating themselves and learning from those around me and the experiences that I have. And then those learnings and those experiences manifest in various different ways. And sometimes it's paintings or murals. Other times it's completely different things.
So what do you think it brings to, what value do you think it brings to Dublin City?
I think public artworks, given their scale, are a very visceral component of conversation. I think at the end of the day, that's the most important thing that they bring about is conversation, or pause for reflection, or a change in mindset, or
it's just a picture on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, art is in the eye, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So it's like what certain people derive from it and what other people derive from it is going to be very different. You know, and again, people are totally entitled to experience whatever it is that they experience when they look at a work of art. And really, it's about just trying to motivate people to think. You know, I think a lot of society is based on ticking boxes and adherence and obeying. And oftentimes, given the scale of an artwork or the vibrancy, it can break that system and give that pause for reflection and that pause for thought, and then that reflection and that thought can lead to conversation. That conversation leads to engagement with a wide variety of subjects, and the more we engage with a wider variety of subjects, the healthier our society will be.
It's obvious and clear that you love doing what you're doing, yeah.
That's a love-hate relationship. I mean, we love it at times, we hate it at times. It's certainly very difficult. And I think oftentimes difficult things don't necessarily register as love, but anything that's worth doing is difficult.
It's a passion, yeah, it is.
Yeah, we're passionate about it for sure.
Right, so for instance, if, let's say tomorrow morning, right, if it came to a stage where you had really no choice but just to stop this work, what other kind of work would you do to keep you as happy as you are doing your artwork?
I genuinely believe nothing else would give me a sense of satisfaction or happiness that I experience through doing what we do. And that's because what we do, again, educates us and provides us with experience, which gives us greater context on life. And I believe that greater context makes us better people. And when a society strives to consistently better themselves, I think it improves. And when it improves, I think people, generally speaking, can get more from life. And I think that's what life is all about, you know, is trying to get as much out of the time that we have available to us as possible. And like, nothing is promised.
When you were talking there about what value does the art bring, the Dubliners sang Raglan Road and Seven Drunken Nights. And Seven Drunken Nights is what you were saying. They might draw Mickeys on the wall. Yeah? It's that kind of thing. And then Raglan Road is sang, or what's the other one, Brendan Behan, The Old Triangle, is sang at the end of every single gig I've ever been at in this country. And it's held up as this beautiful representation of the creative, artistic side of Ireland. And I think when they wrote both of those pieces, whoever wrote them probably didn't imagine the life that they would have beyond the pen. And when you do some of your artwork, like I remember the vulture pieces that you'd done as a kind of comment on the vulture funds in Ireland and the banking system and all that. Now, some people never seen them. Some people seen them every day. Some people loved them. Some people hated them. It probably affected people in ways that we will never, ever know. Yeah? But that's not the business of the artist. The artist is just to create the art, just to do the piece, just to write the song, just to make the film. I think what's stifling that is that it looks like the art is being edited before it's being penned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think art is something that allows us to understand the world that we live in, the society that we live in, our country, the people who are in it. And, you know, if that is impacted before it's created, or it's like curated before it can be created, or there's limits or parameters put on what sort of art should be seen or what shouldn't, then that's fundamentally kind of altering that ability for us to understand who we are.
We just want the freedom to make mistakes.
You're not allowed to make mistakes. Cop onto yourself, risk aversion, obey, shut the fuck up, grow up, because you're not getting a real fucking job.
Our greatest learnings in our particular, in the lifespan of Subset, have come from the mistakes that we've made, not the successes. We've learned most about ourselves and about what we do and about our society through our mistakes. And it's a fundamental right for the citizens of a country to educate themselves.
Happy is the city whose citizens make mistakes.
Yeah.
I love that. That's nice, man. You're not allowed. It's so tough.
And who make the mistakes free of fear for consequence. Because, of course, there are consequences with every action that we take. But the fear of the consequences immediately acts as a curatorial force. You know, what language we use, how we dress, where we go. These are decisions that we should make on a day-to-day, moment-by-moment basis.
It'd be like when we protested in Ballymun, right? We done a human rights picket in Ballymun because Martin's community has a similar relationship with Dublin City Council that you guys do. They hold all the purse strings, they hold all the power, and you have to fucking get permission nearly to have a piss, you know? But it'd be like us going to them going, we're going to do a human rights picket. Can you tell us what to put on the signs so we don't offend anybody? You know what I mean? Or we don't discommode anybody.
But even the idea of offence, you know, and again, like we were saying beforehand, Martin, like language is so weighted now. Offence isn't necessarily a bad thing because it gives rise to conversation. And if people are offended, then, you know, people are offended, and that's a very personal decision and a personal engagement. You know, if someone says to me, you know, stay to your shoes, or, you know, why are you wearing that jacket? I can take that and be offended by it, and I can react in a certain way because of it, or I can listen to what they're saying and try to understand where they're coming from, and in that I can educate myself. And the idea that we as a people need a higher power or a higher authority to tell us what's right and wrong is ludicrous.
Where we live, right, there's a Dublin City Council have built a wall. It's like over 12 foot high. As we drive out we live in a caravan site, you know. When we drive out our entrance, the entrance, but it's exits when you're going out, and this wall is right in front of us, and it's similar to looking at that big wall there in Mount Joy. So supposing, just say, if I wanted you to paint that wall, yeah, because we are going to paint it anyway, regardless of what Dublin City Council comes and paints it down again or makes no difference, we're going to do it. Supposing if I want you to paint that wall, yeah, myself and say the residents, yeah, how would we go about getting you to paint that wall and also looking for funds to do that?
Depends on whether or not you want to engage with the City Council. If you do, then there's that particular process and procedure that we outlined, and if you don't, then we just do it.
Yeah, but suppose, is the Dublin City Council I have to apply for funds to?
You just pay for your own pocket.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we do. And like say, most recently we painted 2 murals. We funded them ourselves. We didn't look for funding from anybody. We didn't look for permission from anybody other than the people.
This wall now is like, it's a long, long wall.
I've seen it. Dean sent me a photograph of it, I think.
It's actually the same height as the Berlin Wall, interestingly enough. It's 4 metres high and it's about,
that's right.
Could be 500 metres long. Brand new polished concrete. It's only begging for some stinging artwork.
See, I think it's funny as well. Walls generally as like a construct or a concept are for creating enclosures, but painting them actually breaks down barriers.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, it's a boundary that we can smash with art.
So just by chance, if we did propose to Dublin City Council and get them to pay for it also, would you be interested? You would.
If we were in the driving seat in terms of deciding what gets painted, but if it's going to be a case that because they're funding it, we have to include X, Y, and Z subject matter, or do A, B, and C, then no, because immediately then it's not art, it's
paint by numbers,
basically.
So what Mark is probably alluding to without saying it is there's an opportunity or a possibility to just do it ourselves without involving mammy or daddy.
I'd like them to pay for it because they're the ones that constructed the wall.
Yeah, I don't. Well, if they want to pay for it, happy days.
That would be my fight, not yours.
That'd be nice. It'd be bittersweet. Kind of, they made this wall.
Yes,
they paid for it to create a boundary between you and their depot, but they're paying for a mural. I think a more interesting way is don't engage with them and just fucking paint something on it, and they will pay for it in the feedback that they get. They'll pay for it by the fact that it's being highlighted. There's a fucking 4 metre wall blocking the travellers in. What are you up to? You just mad apartheid fuckers.
You probably look at that with Dean. I'm thinking if they put the wall there and we want the fact this wall is not going to be knocked down, and we want the place looking that little bit better, and the only way to do that is put a nice bit of art, but it would be something that we would want on it, like, you know what I mean? Something that sort of, let's say, maybe represents the traveller in a certain sense, if you like. And if you were up for that, like, I can, the fellow said, I can start taking action, like, you know what I mean? But yeah, I've been thinking about it a while now but I'd like something like that because it would brighten let's say it would take the depressing look away from our entrance, if you like.
Agreed.
Somewhere with a bit of colour and a bit of meaning, just to disguise that depressing wall, that big 4 metre barrier that's between us and Dublin City Council, if you like. The Dublin City Council have created, like, you know what I mean?
Can I ask then, you were asking us what we think art brings to the city. What do you think that art would bring to your community?
I think, personally, I'm not saying I like graffiti, because the truth is, some of this graffiti, if I looked at it, I wouldn't even know what it was in front of me, in the line of trying to make it out, like, you know what I mean? I think the art that we're talking about, that stuff now that he was saying here was done on the side of the house, beside our site, which Travellers lives in the same house, they're friends of mine, and it's absolutely beautiful. Like, you can almost see it from any part of our site because it's up high, and the colour itself, even regardless of obviously Steve knows more about the meaning of the picture, but the colour itself alone brings light to the area, and I think this can do the same thing in a lot of areas. So that's why I can't understand why Dublin City Council would rather have the public looking at a ran down wall, if you like, yeah, rather than have them looking at this nice colourful painting with a bit of meaning behind it. People will stop and look, and then, as you said, they have all different ideas or thoughts about it, and all sorts of maybe good imaginations and stuff like that. So the bottom line, I think, yeah, it brings light to that certain area.
I don't think they're averse to art. I think they're probably more averse to risk and offending, possibly, and relinquishing control.
Yeah, me personally, I think it's just, look, we're going to tell you what you don't tell us.
Yeah, like
I
Martin's
think
community, Martin's
we go
whole
through it all the time.
group, like he said to me recently that the number one bane in his life is Dublin City Council. You know what I mean? And for him to say that statement, that didn't just, come out of his back pocket. That's something that he has had to think about and live with for the last 30, 40 years.
See, Dublin City Council are only just like a pawn in a greater power game anyway. They are just one manifestation of which there are multiple in terms of control and making decisions for our society and how it progresses and how it develops and what's part of it and what isn't part of it and who gets to be part of certain things and who doesn't. And that's fundamentally what we disagree with. And going back to what I was saying, like, murals aren't the most important things in the world, but in the context of this conversation, it's what they actually represent. And in our situation, what they represent is a lack of recognition for authority where we don't feel it is relevant. And so much so that we're willing to, or we have already sacrificed everything for the conversation to be had. So we never wanted to go to court. We didn't want to waste public money. We didn't want to waste the time of the courts. We didn't want to waste the time of the judges, or even waste the time of Dublin City Council.
You were using common sense, basically.
Yeah, and we tried to use common sense in the hope
You tried to use what the thing you said doesn't exist, democracy. I don't think you're against authority or against people, having rules and plan permission. It's just a lack of democracy. A democracy that only suits one side.
I think if you're going to have a rule set, that rule set has to be nearly infallible in terms of it can't be one rule set for one person or one group and one rule set for another. And at this moment in time, the rule set by which they're trying to prosecute us, they don't even follow themselves.
I love that one. We make the rules, but we don't follow them, and we expect you to. And if you don't, you're going to court.
Is there many other people that just likes this, what you're doing now, this, if you call it art or painting, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, there's a very rich and deep.
Would you call it a community of artists, like?
Yeah, I suppose so.
And it's a big, I'm going to use the word community, it is a big community of art, is it?
It's a community. I don't necessarily know if it's a big community. I think it could be a whole lot bigger if certain things were changed. One of them being the legislation, like we're talking about. I think if it were changed, it would give rise to a lot of other people being involved in it, and as a result of that, then you'd have a more inclusive community, a more diverse community, and with that would come diversity of opinion, diversity of subject matter, and general concepts.
And are they all having the same problem?
Certain people experience the same problem, but I think the level at which we're experiencing it is unique to us, and that's self-inflicted insofar as we knew we were breaking the law when we broke it, and we did it anyway. And because we did that, and because we were open about it and we communicated it publicly, it became a matter of contention between us and Dublin City Council because it was embarrassing for them. And embarrassment is like their kryptonite. They really don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to be painted, excuse the pun, in a bad light. And we consistently did that. And as was, commented by them in public settings, we needed to be made an example of.
You're like the bold child in the back of the religion class that tells the teacher that there's other gods. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, but what about Buddha? Who made God?
And now those bold children are being brought to the principal's office.
And now those bold children are doing other pieces that are questioning the existence of murals, the existence of God. You know what I mean? You're doing a piece on a wall that's the same colour as the crown chakra, for anybody who cares, to kind of spark a conversation within yourselves, within the onlooker, within Dublin City Council as to what the fuck is a mural, what's the difference between mural and paint. If you do something on an inside wall or an outside wall, what's the difference and who cares, and why is there rules and regulations and legislations to prevent us doing the stuff that we want to do.
At the risk of sounding like highfalutin nearly, but I would say this most recent body of work that we have done has, like from my personal perspective anyway, helped to find God nearly. And I don't mean that in necessarily a religious sense. I wouldn't be a devout Catholic or Christian, but in the sense of feeling a complete listlessness and fear and stress and anxiety and pressure and all of these different, what I would consider to be man-made emotions that ultimately sever your connection with your own consciousness. This particular body of work has removed all of those different things and helped reconnect to that higher being or higher form of consciousness. And that is, I suppose, that we are gods unto ourselves. And even using that terminology and that language, people will probably look at that or listen to that and think, who do these people think they are? But at a point now when it's fortunate and unfortunate that sense of freedom or that sense of clarity or purpose has come right at the end, or what could be the end. But that's genuinely how we feel, and anyone that has a problem with that, I suppose,
it reminds me of a conversation I had with Martin last week, because he has become a man in his world by standing up and being at the front of a human rights picket. And he said to me, a year ago, I wouldn't have done that. I would have not gone there. I would have listened to the external voices of everybody around me and would have been motivated by fear, probably, to not go there. You know what I mean? But something has changed in me, and now I feel like I have some fucking control over where me and my family and my community are going.
It's probably that fear of what people think about you, what they're going to say about you, and the way they look at you because you're doing these things. But the reality of it is, if we all stood up for what we think is right, I think we'd be living in a better world, wouldn't we?
I think as well, the idea of being concerned with what other people think when those other people don't even know what they think of themselves is absurd. But it takes, or at least it's taken for us, going to the deepest, darkest parts of our experience and our soul, and trying to cling to a sense of reality as is determined by other people in order to stay sane. And really it was only when let go of that and fully engulfed ourselves in the unknown and the undefined that came that sense of freedom, or that sense of clarity, or that sense of purpose.
So what you're saying there now, if I'm going back to Dublin City Council again, if they're taking all this away from you, does that mean it could lead to being fed up or getting depressed or something like that taking over your life?
There is nothing further that can be taken from us. Everything has been taken, probably isn't the right word, but we have given up everything, or we have sacrificed
for starters,
everything.
they're taking away the natural gift that you have of artwork.
I don't think so.
They're not allowing you to do it, are they?
I don't think so, because if we so wished, we could continue to do what we have done previously, but we would have to do it in accordance with somebody else's decisions, somebody else's opinions, somebody else's perceptions.
So is there no agreements that can come between you and Dublin City Council to allow you still to continue doing the work that you love?
No, it's pretty much our way or the highway. That's their opinion.
Yeah.
And then our opinion is, well, it's our way or the highway.
So you've got an immovable force and a rock that won't break.
So is this your way of saying that you're going to give up because Dublin City Council are on your back? Does that still see it's your way?
No, I wouldn't see it as giving up. I would just see bringing it to its natural conclusion, like Dean's talking about an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object.
That's what I meant to say.
If they're the unstoppable force, they have a huge amount of resources at their disposal. So the force at which they can apply to us, which is the immovable object, there's going to come a time where the force will outweigh our immovability.
Yeah, but you've also tried to compromise along the way It's not like you're just like this dumb, immovable force. You've tried dialogue, legislation, policy, all of that stuff.
Yeah, well, we've tried to reach a middle ground. But it hasn't materialized, and the amount of back steps that we would have to take to reach that middle ground would actually result in it not being a middle ground. So therefore, why would we do that? And that's why I don't see this as being the end or them winning. I see it as us fully giving ourselves up to something more important than us as individuals. Like I was saying, that higher calling or that higher being or connection with that greater consciousness, or it's a spiritual thing for us.
So in some ways you have to thank Dublin City Council for forcing you into this spiritual journey.
Yeah, 100%. And we've said that on multiple occasions. They have been the fire which we have had to walk through. And having walked through that fire and what we're left with now, I'm happier with what we had. It's shed everything that was unimportant and inconsequential, and has left us with a core of reason and meaning, which up until this point we couldn't understand because it was covered with all of these different things. And as in a book I read recently, there's I don't know if it's Hindu or where it comes from, but it's called ignis essentia, which is fire that strips to the essence and brings you back to the essence of your being. And that's what this situation has done. I know myself better now at the end of this than I've ever done. Even in the last 2 weeks, I'm finally coming to terms with and understanding things that I had struggled to come to terms with or understand with for years or decades, So I'm entirely grateful for Dublin City Council being the adversary which has led us to this point. Despite things being antagonistic, I suppose you've got nothing but love for them at the end of the day. I don't see, it's like wolves don't concern themselves with the opinions of sheep. So even if it's a case that the sheep end up slaughtering the wolves, at least we'll have died on our terms.
That's a lovely way of putting it. A few things. One is that you mentioned that this might be the last act. Is it the last act? How do you know it's the last act? When will that decision be made? If this is the last act, is there another play?
All intents and purposes, Subset has been dead for years, but we have been trying to resuscitate it, to bring it back to life. But in doing that, we've realized that we don't need to resuscitate it or bring it back to life. Rather, we need to live in a different way than we had been before.
The band is breaking up. You're going to be in a different band.
No, I don't even see it like that, because this is the only iteration of Subset that there will ever be. There's not going to be another version of it after going through this. We won't change. We'll either succeed being who we are, or we'll fail being who we are. But we won't change in that process.
So supposing Dublin City Council, say tomorrow, for instance, right, approached and said, okay lads, we're going to come to some sort of an agreement here. Would you spend the rest of your life doing this?
We'd spend the rest of our lives doing this without a shadow of a doubt. I feel, I don't see this as a profession, I see it as a vocation. That's how strongly I would feel about it. I don't feel the sense of purpose or clarity or contentedness or happiness in anything else other than this. So if we don't continue doing this, I don't think our flame will ever burn as brightly.
In anything else?
Yes.
Yes, I do what can be probably called community work, but it's hard to box it in, just like it's hard to label what you do. And regardless of the rules and regulations and the forces, pushing me or pulling me, I do community work. And that's what I do. And over the years, the state has, intervened and said, well, you have to have this qualification and that qualification and da-da-da-da-da. And, I haven't gone and followed that rule, but I still do community work. I still do the work that I do.
Is it because you like it or just because you
it's
get
just
paid
who
for
I
it?
am. I love it. It's fucking, it connects me back to an energy, to a source, to love. It's what I do. And I don't do it for results. I don't do it for fucking anything else other than the love of doing it.
So basically, if it stopped tomorrow morning, then you wouldn't feel as happy about doing something else.
It wouldn't stop tomorrow morning. That's I think the point that the lads are making. This is what I do. This is what I breed. So me stopping it, I might as well not live.
This is what I'm trying to make. This is your choice.
Yeah.
But the lads here that have been he doesn't class as forced, have been stopped forced into stop doing it. But the reality is, it looks like you've been forced. It seems to be that they're forced into stop doing something that they love. So, where do you turn to after that, like?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really know. I don't know what we'll do after this. But I suppose like it is what Dean is saying, where like it isn't really something that's tangible for us in terms of while we do murals or we do lots of different stuff, and we don't really know exactly what we're gonna do after this. But whatever it is, it will still be a continuation of that thing, of our expression in whatever way that kind of comes forth. We're just not sure what that will be.
Yeah, I was just using the analogy while you went to the toilet there of I do community work, and no matter what, rules and regulations have been brought up over the last 30 odd years of me doing community work, I still do community work. You know what I mean? And by certain measures, I need to be a level 8 qualified and fucking something. But I didn't follow that path. I just went down the path I do. And it's not like I'm trying to do community work. It's just who I am. It's what I do. So what do you want to get from this conversation? Why have this conversation?
There isn't really a particular or specific motivation for doing it. Naturally,
What do you want to get out of it?
A conversation with friends. Like, we were talking about the art of conversation and how it's lacking in society. I think it's valuable for us as humans to have long-form conversations about the areas of interest to us. And I just see this as another one of those. And what you guys are doing and the subjects that you discuss and the education which you are receiving through doing that is interesting to me. And then to be part of that and to have these subjects discussed within that forum is interesting, and I think is just another experience and another way in which we can educate ourselves. So beyond that, there's no particular motivation. I suppose on the subject of what we're trying to do or what we're trying to achieve right now, which is the change in legislation, I think it's valuable for people to understand why we're doing it, in the hope that that will maybe provide greater context. I think context is good for drumming up support. People can understand something. I think it's easier or more likely that they will get behind it.
So in the new year, there'll be a bill. How do they know about it? How do they get behind it? What's the bill?
The bill will be lodged in the Dáil sometime in January. When it is lodged, it will be released on our website so people can see exactly what it is that's being proposed. On our website then they'll also be able to download a letter of support if they wish to support it, and they can sign that and send it to their TD or local councillor to inform them that they support it. So when it comes before the Dáil and then eventually the Seanad to vote upon it, the more people who have contacted local TDs or local councillors or TDs and outline their support for it, the more likelihood that it will get passed.
Look at you using the bleeding democracy that doesn't exist.
The other thing as well, I was actually saying it through fun, but I realised that, say yourselves as artists, yeah, and Dublin City Council and Travellers and Dublin City Council, there seems to be a little bit there in common. The fact that you get told to go, move along, get along, and don't come back here no more. It makes me see a little bit of, again, that little bit where we have that in common. Like, and it's Dublin City Council's, again, whatever you want to call them, tactics, one to another.
I think human beings in general have more in common than we don't. And I think lack of conversation results in a society where we're divided and conquered.
Get along, move along, don't come back here no more.
Don't be doing the tinsmith stuff.
You know,
Simulate, get in line there. Don't be doing all that stuff.
to upset the apple cart or to push back against the status quo is a difficult thing for anyone to do, because there's a sense of scale and might behind authority in the various different formats in which it manifests. But I think the more a society disobeys, the better, because it gives, or it raises questions, and questions are good. You know, we don't have the answers, but we certainly have a lot of questions. Because we don't have answers, previously that would have been, you know, there would have been a sense of fear with that. Like, we have to know exactly how everything is going to unfold if what we are proposing happens. But I don't believe that to be true anymore. We don't have to tell everybody, lay it out for them, you know, this is exactly what's going to happen in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time. Rather, we have to put the question to them, which is, do you want to see how this would unfold in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, if this happened? And if it did, you should engage with it. And if you don't, you should still engage with it, because your opinion, you know, holds equal merit. So even if this bill goes to the Dáil and it's voted against, we'll still be able to say that we did our absolute utmost to have the conversation. And that's what's most important.
Yeah, I think my motivation for this podcast is just conversation, is to explore the myths of the stuff that divides us, but the reality of the things that we have in common. And the motivation to come over here today to you guys in Mend. Why is it called Mend, by the way? Because I always thought it was like it heals or something like that. It's a healing force.
One of the crew came up with the name because the building was in a serious state of disrepair when we came here, and we had no resources. And you know, to mend means like to slowly tip away or fix or to heal. And I suppose that's what we have tried to do with this space, is mend it.
Basically, you painted up the whole building and made it look beautiful, yeah.
And in doing so, I suppose we learnt more about ourselves and more about each other, and it gave us like a petri dish nearly to experiment within.
So if you're allowed to do in Dublin City what you've done with this building here, it's a work of art, to be honest about it. Wouldn't Dublin be a better place also, for different reasons?
There's lots of things that could lead to Dublin being a better place, but it's like,
well, that's one of them.
Yeah, you have to break eggs if you want to make an omelette. And in our current society, people are afraid of their lives of breaking those eggs for fear of what will happen when you do.
The eggs are bleeding broken. Humpty Dumpty has fallen off the bleeding wall and he's in bits and he's lying across the bleeding city in a homeless shelter. You know what I mean? Or in a bleeding traveller site, or in fucking some shithole in bleeding North Circular Road with 15 Brazilians in a bedroom.
There's cracks everywhere, you know, to follow on from that analogy. Our society is cracked, and those cracks run deep. Because they run so deep, it means things are broken already.
But art not only shows us the cracks and makes the cracks...
can mend them.
It gives us the opportunity for something that's unpalatable at certain stages to be, you know, for us to look at it, for us to open that door. It can also mend, it can also heal. And so can conversations, and that's my motivation for coming over here. One is to learn, to mend, to heal. I love art. I really admire what yous are doing. I love you, bro. And I just want to express that in a way that I don't have to edit it or filter it through a rule set.
I think the thing with art and conversation is as well that it can lead to unity. We're in a society that's very kind of, I don't know, there's a lot of arguments and different sides fighting amongst each other. We were talking about it earlier with the divide and conquer, but you know, we need more conversations, and we need more art to try and unite people, because I think that's something that we're lacking at the minute.
Shit's very fractured at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say the word fractured as well.
And it's very difficult to get to the root of these problems because things are so, you know, inordinately complex, and that's part of the control mechanism, is to make things so complex that the layman can't actually be involved in trying to fix things. I actually think it's not our leaders elected or unelected, who are going to fix or solve our problems. It's we as a society, as a community, as a nation who will do that. And in order to do that, we need to find the similarities, not the differences. And we need to find that common ground. Rather than, everybody sticking a flag in their tiny little part of the land and saying, this is the way things run here and this is the way things run here. And if that means that we have to sacrifice what we have tried to build, then so be it, because there are things at play in the world which are far more important than our particular little storm in a teacup. And our only real way of engaging with that or expressing that is through our own experience. And this is our experience, and therefore that's what we're expressing. Like, we're doing that in what we believe is a respectful way, but then also, respectfully, we don't give a fuck either. Like, we were only chatting yesterday, and there's been so many times throughout the last 10 years where I've thought, that's it, I've got it now, I've cracked it, I don't give a fuck, I don't care what anyone thinks, I don't care what anyone says. But I didn't really believe it, and I knew that deep down that I didn't believe it, but I didn't want to accept that, because to accept that then would force me to look at myself in the mirror again. And when you're looking at yourself in the mirror every day trying to figure out how to improve yourself and it's not working, it can become very difficult to continue to do it. But then, from doing it so frequently and so often, that's when we realize this is it. This is how you resolve these problems internally. Is you consistently look at yourself and you think, how can I improve? How can I be a better person?
It reminds me of an ongoing conversation I'm having with Martin about where the travelling community is in terms of, because a big thing in the travel community is giving a fuck about what other people think, and there's a shame and all that attached to it. And I think an interesting journey for Martin and for all travelling people is that journey into themselves, in our journey, where we stop being influenced by what external voices say and we start to listen to that inner voice.
For years, we would have been pointing the finger at Dublin City Council and saying, it's them and it's their fault and it's this and it's that. But then that didn't really lead anywhere, or didn't lead to any particular progress. It just sort of pushed us round and round on the merry-go-round, we stayed in that circle. It was only through that deep sense of self-reflection that we realised, any problems are internal. Any solutions then are put out into the external. That's where we're at now. Having spent hours and hours, not hours and hours, years in a dark room in the freezing cold, almost like a sensory deprivation chamber where all we had were our own thoughts and our own opinions and a mirror in which to look at them. That then gave us a deeper sense of clarity and of purpose. That's resulted in, I don't know if Dina said this to you, Martin, but recently we painted 2 murals. And we painted them as a means to draw attention to the legislation as it currently stands. So in the Planning and Development Act and the Planning and Development Regulations, the legislations which govern the creation of public artwork, painting is considered exempted development, so it doesn't need planning permission. Then it goes on to say further down, except for the purposes of creating a mural. But there is no definition of what a mural is. And if you look at the definition of a mural, it's the application of paint to a building or structure to create a painting or picture. So, again, painting is exempted development, a mural isn't, but a mural is painting. So, we painted 2 murals on 2 buildings, and we used one single colour. So, effectively, we applied paint to a building and a structure. And then when we had finished them, and we put them online so people could see them, and we explained the concept behind them, we then filed 2 complaints ourselves with Dublin City Council and brought to their attention that we had painted these murals. And the purpose of doing that is to trigger their investigation process. So they'll have to then come and assess these murals and determine whether or not it is or isn't a mural. And the purpose of that is then they'll have to define what a mural is, which they currently don't. And the reason we feel that's necessary or that's essential is because a mural should be defined. And we feel a mural should be exempt. So therefore it shouldn't need planning permission in certain cases and certain instances. All of which should be highlighted in the bill so people can see exactly and specifically what we're talking about.
So is it like you're fighting a losing game? Is that how it is?
Well, it's more just like we've just like come up over the barricade and like we're charging towards the
It
cavalry.
seems like they're coming up with every option and there's no evidence of what state's legislation, basically.
Yeah, I think they're applying a rule set that they don't fully understand or that they haven't given sufficient consideration, and we're trying to highlight the fact that...
As long as they're able to print it up, I think they're happy with that.
Yeah, exactly, and as I said at the start, even if the bill doesn't get passed, that's okay, but it needs to be engaged with, it needs to be discussed, and that's what we hope the court cases would be. So after 5 years of legal proceedings, which was like incredibly stressful and angst-ridden and massive amounts of pressure and serious implications for our mental health and just our person, just as people. 2 days before the court case was supposed to go ahead, Dublin City Council decided they were going to vacate the cases and ask the court to strike them out, which to us was like a massive disrespect because they were the ones who initiated the court cases. They were the ones who chose the court in which it was going to take place. And I don't think they ever thought that we would get as far as we did. And when it dawned on them that we were actually going to challenge them and they were going to have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that we had broken the law, they bottled it. And that was incredibly frustrating because for all the reasons I just said and everything we sacrificed and everything we gave, we did that because we wanted closure, negative or positive. And we were willing to put criminal convictions on the line, fines, costs, everything. Yeah, after, it was so serious that they had to bring us through the courts and they had to take up, the time of the courts and the time of the judges and spend public money and dedicate their time to it. They then decided right before it was to go ahead that, actually, no, this isn't as important.
It's like the opposite of pouring honey in your ears, tying your hands up. Because they, at any one point, have hundreds of bleeding cases. And so they just tie everybody's hands up in litigation and bullshit days in court. They can afford it. You can't. 4 or 5 years down the line, you're in the bleeding dark room on your own.
I think we can only speculate as well. But I think a part of it was the fact that they didn't want to have these arguments heard. They didn't want to have to face the fact that the legislation as it stands is completely flawed. I think that was really frustrating for us as well because we had, we'd gone off, we'd done our homework, we'd really got stuck into this whole thing and we're ready to come and fight them on their terms in their kind of venue, their chosen venue. And then just as we were kind of ready to get in there and fight them, they pulled out of it, which, so I think that's kind of partly where this artwork came from as well, was us wanting to express these ideas kind of while we still have the chance to do that.
If people out there listen to this, see the artwork, well, go and seek it out. Go onto Subset's Instagram, onto Subset's website, go and seek it out. Physically go down and have a look at it while it's still up. There's one on Angel Street and there's one, where's the other one? On Camden Road.
Get there before Dublin City Council
Get there before
there.
it's painted over. Have a look, have your say, comment it, critique it, slag it off, but have the conversation about it. And if you're interested in any of this conversation about where we're going as a society, as a country, in terms of art, in terms of control, check out the bill, which will be hopefully dropping in January in the Dáil, and participate in democracy.
Have your opinion heard.
Yeah, have your opinion heard. You have the right to remain vocal, which is one of the things that I wrote a couple of years ago when there was a lot of stuff going on in America and, there was black people being arrested and it was, you have the right to remain silent. You also have the right to remain vocal. Open your fucking mouth, open your eyes, open your ears, open your heart. Thanks, lads.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, boys.
I enjoyed that. You up the Subset. So that's us for this episode, a Traveller and a Countryman podcast. If you like it, let us know, share it around, and we'll see you on the road.